This program is brought to you by the Forbes-featured Freedom Hub Health Plan, the alternative to overpriced and restrictive insurance. The Freedom Hub Health Plan is exactly what you need. By Frequency Medicine Associates, supporting health professionals and laypersons with safe and effective advanced telemedicine-like technology that can scan and help rebalance the root causes of stress and illness. By the Planet Lockdown film, which can be seen on the Freedom Hub's Rumble channel along with many great speakers. And by The Pavilion, a 21st century community hub that brings together many of the disruptive innovations featured by the Freedom Hub, including direct pay healthcare, farm-to-table dining, TED-like Freedom Hub talks, and more. Visit your-mp.com/pavilion solution for details. It is Wednesday, and it's time for Health, Biz, and Politics. We have a good show for you today, like getting really a down-to-earth show. Anyway, if you're new to the channel, let me share the screen. We actually have a website you can look at, see what's going on all the time, and it's your-mp.com. I will take you there now. We actually redid it, so if you're whether you're new or old, we have a new lineup on top for our tabs, Your Health, Your Wealth, Your Marketplace, and Your Media Hub, which is where the webinars are. So if you click on that, you will come to this page and you will see Wednesday and Thursday shows, who's going to be here. Also, there are subscribe links, which we do recommend you subscribe, so you just get these notices, and then sign up for the ones you want. Down below are upcoming guests, and we also have our different channels. Not YouTube so much, though. Today, maybe we tend to push the envelope or is it Charlie that pushes it, or no? We all do, all of us. And so BitChute, Buddy on YouTube, Rumble, etc. Anyway, let me get back to our screen. And Charlie, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Sure. So over the 5 years, Jim, we've hosted Freedom Hub Weekly, both on this health-focused version and tomorrow's broader regulatory capture, interesting topics version. We've had some on food, food is medicine, local food, craft food. I think Joel Salatin presented early on years ago from Polyface Farms. He's Mr. Do the farming right, get your food local kind of person here in Virginia. And I think Roxanne has worked with Joel too, out there in the mountains of Virginia. And both you, Jim, and I know Roxanne from the American College of Healthcare Trustees, where we've done events, including one together about a year ago or so, up there in the DC area, on using cash patients and independent medicine to fix the healthcare system. And for the trustees, Roxanne has helped with a partner of theirs at Physician Outlook magazine. And Roxanne has a doctorate and other degrees on helping the craft food movement, of which Joel Salatin is the prime mover there, to market their products directly to consumers. And I think as big agriculture, big ag, as we affectionately know these nefarious schemers, have made frankenfood out of the crops with their pesticides and herbicides, all of which are poisonous, and they're not using regenerative farming. And that has led those who think for themselves to seek out organic farms near them, local farming. And those are the farms that Roxanne kind of helps with the marketing angle. And today is a pretty cool topic because all of us in the suburbs have as our habit the mowing of the lawn every other week. And, those of us who try to eat better know that dandelion is a really great leafy vegetable for the liver, for your immunity. And there are so many other weeds out there that are edible. And, a lot of us try to garden, and weeding is a hassle. but we know we should do it. So having someone like Roxanne kind of give us the easy how-tos, because as for our safety, the soil is depleted of nutrients from monoculture. It's a mess. So with that, Roxanne, why don't you go filibuster away for as long as you need
Yes.
to tell us how to shape up,
It's crazy. So I don't think I can solve the world's problems, right? But I know that I can solve a lot of the food problems that many people have with so few simple solutions. So the first thing is stop spraying your lawn with pesticides and herbicides. You are literally killing yourself, your food, the healthy microbiome. Like I've worked with a group out of Kenya because they imported corn from the United States. Well, when they imported the corn, it also came along with corn worms, and they didn't know how to handle that pest. So here's me on the phone with, the Department of Ag in Kenya going, so do you have stink bugs? And they're like, stink bugs? What are a stink bug? So I pull up the picture and we're sharing it back and forth. And they're like, oh yeah, we eat those. I'm like, well, stop eating them. Take them out into your cornfield because they're a natural predator of the cornworm. And if we just learned to take what biology has given us, what nature has given us, and use it to the advantage, we would have a plethora of food for everyone. So when I lead foraging walks, and I usually only take 40 people maximum at a time, we look at plants, we look at mushrooms, we look at fungus, we look at lichens, and all of them, they have edible and poisonous counterparts. And my speech always starts with, Mother Nature's given you a plethora and you can eat anything once. And I say once, because if you eat the wrong thing once, you're going to die or wish you would die. So it's all out there for you to do. So when you're looking at your front yard, let's say you decide not to spray. You're going to stop this year. You're never going to spray again. The first rule is give it 2-year cycle. Let the ground wash out. Let Mother Nature kind of purge your soil of the chemicals that are in there. They're going to be there for a lot longer, but for safety's sake, give it a good year before you ever start harvesting from your yard. The first thing everyone's going to easily be able to identify is the dandelion. Super awesome food. You can eat the roots, the leaves, and the flower. If you like to drink, it takes a box of yeast, like the regular bread yeast, a bunch of dandelion flowers, and you can make your own wine and have wine for yourself in about 6 months. The dandelion leaves are easy to eat when they're lightly green, but a lot of people don't eat them when they're mature in the fall. I like to eat them when they're mature in the fall because they're going to be exceptionally bitter. They're really high in nutrient density. So I deep fry them, make fritters out of them. It's not bad for you. It's a different taste. If you're not used to it, you may not enjoy it, but I like it. I like that bitter flavor. The roots, you're going to wait till fall, till all the leaves die off. You'll pick your root out of the ground and you'll stick it. If you have a dehydrator, that's amazing. If you don't, like put it someplace where it won't mold, let it dry out. The next flower you're going to look at with the dandelion, and I like to partner these two together because we can solve 2 problems with this one. There's a flower called chicory. Many farmers will plow it under. It's a gorgeous blue flower. If you're going for natural landscaping, you will love it in your flower bed. It's beautiful. It reseeds itself. It will come up year after year. But when you mix chicory root with dandelion root, it tastes just like coffee. So you can eliminate the transportation of coffee seeds from one country to another, replace your daily tea blend, have a liver cleanser with just 2 plants right from your front yard. Charles, you're making a weird face. Did you have a question?
No, I'm liking this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So if you don't know if you will like this, there's a company and a product called Dandy Blend, and I absolutely love that company and product. Yeah, I think Jim's had it before. When you mix it light, it tastes like tea. I highly recommend adding honey to it. When you mix it strong, tastes just like coffee. I go ahead and put my creamer and sugar in it. Never know the difference. And most people I have given it to think they're getting chicory coffee from Louisiana. That's the flavor that you're going to have. So I love those 2 plants. They are super simple to propagate in your yard. If you have any kind of flower beds or gardens, you'll be like, boom, done. The next plant you're going to look for is called plantain. So it's a fat-shaped leaf. Depending on where you live in the United States, there's going to be a broadleaf or a narrow leaf. There's hundreds of pictures online. It is a very easy plant to identify. You can't really mix it up. There's no poisonous lookalikes that I know of. So that plant, it's going to help you with bug bites. It's going to help you with sunburns. It's going to help you with upset stomachs. If you're using it for any kind of injury, you can make a poultice by chewing on it. The acid in your mouth is going to break it down partially. You can put it on the wounds, but it's also good as a lettuce or salad. You know, it's a nice and versatile plant. The next one you're going to look for, and
I'm
there's
sorry, which one was that?
Yep, that's plantain.
Plantain.
Like the fruit, but not.
Okay.
Jim, I see you talking. I cannot hear you.
Is that, yeah, I have a contractor here. That's why I muted it.
Yeah, no worries.
Is that plantain like the banana thing or a different plant?
No, so it's a different plant. The leaves are going to be kind of similar to the banana plant where they're that oval with the deep veins in it. But this is a simple one that grows all over North America in people's yards, unless they spray them. The next one that's super simple to look for, and there's tons of research studies backing eating it, is wild lettuce. Now, wild lettuce looks very much like dandelion. There's no real poisonous one that I've seen, but I've not been everywhere in the US, so always double check. There's an app that you can download on your phone called Seek, SEEK. It will help you track the plants and vegetations. I have found that it's about 90% right on plants. It is only 50% right on mushrooms. So if you are mushroom foraging, do not do it without someone who has done it in your area before. Anyway, backtracking. So wild lettuce is proven to work at the same receptors as opium. And there's a lot of studies, and some of the first ones that I read, and I apologize, I can't remember the gentleman's name. He would talk about eating a salad of wild lettuce every day to mitigate arthritis pain. And he's like, there was no cost involved. It grows in my yard. Like I didn't have to go to the drugstore to get medication. The part of the plant that contains the opium-like substance is the white sap. And you'll see it on dandelions too. It's not as strong there. But when you cut the wild lettuce and you cut it and you'll see white sap leak out. You can either collect that white sap or just eat the wild lettuce. I mean, might as well have the calories, right? So that's a super simple plant to go out and find as well. The next thing that you're going to look for, or the next thing that I look for, are clovers. So a lot of people have wheat allergies. You know, that's a big thing, myself included. And you're looking for things that are going to replace wheat. So the first one I'm going to give you is the wild clover, the red clover that you see, sometimes called sweet clover. It's got a pink and white flower, super simple to identify. I promise it grows wild in fields everywhere. If you collect the clover heads, you can grind them into a powder. That powder will act 1 for 1, just like flour. It is going to be sweeter. I do generally recommend you make things like pancakes or sweet like zucchini breads, banana breads, that kind of stuff with it, because it's gonna be sweet. If you're trying to make a garlic bread, don't do it because it's not gonna taste right at all. A lot of places grow amaranth. A lot of places grow lamb's quarters. So amaranth and lamb's quarters both grow these very tall, small seeds that look kind of like quinoa, only smaller. The lamb's quarters, you'll see farmers everywhere picking it out of their field and dumping it in the trash. It is a predecessor to spinach. It tastes just like spinach. You can eat it raw, you can eat it cooked, super high in nutrients, like really dense. And most farmers will let you come in and glean their field. If you talk to them and say, hey, I want to come about the end of May, beginning of June, walk through your field, pick all the lamb's quarters weeds out for you. They'll be like, heck yeah, let's do that. You know, obviously be respectful, obviously walk in the rows, don't step on baby seedlings, but you know the drill. And that product actually freezes really well. It dehydrates really well. I like to put it in my garden because it gets these big giant stalks of white flowers that are just stunningly beautiful. It will self-seed. It's a very hard to kill. And the seeds can also be ground just like flour, 1-to-1 replacement, except for they're super dense in protein. So not only are you getting the carbs, you're also getting a high protein load, very much like quinoa. The next plant I'm going to talk a little bit about was the bane of Maine. Like everyone hated it. It's called Japanese knotweed. Everyone told me, "Oh my gosh, this is the worst plant ever. It takes over yards. It'll take up, everything. It'll rip up your plumbing, the whole 9 yards." So what it looks like is bamboo, but it is not bamboo. But Japanese knotweed is a high adaptogen. It's got ways to regrow your neural pathways. Like, will bring rejuvenation to your skin. Hugely amazing plant. Roxanne planted it in her yard. Apparently you can over harvest Japanese knotweed and kill it. So if you are, and I know it's wild everywhere in Pennsylvania, it's wild everywhere in New York, it's wild everywhere, like craziness, all over the place. And it does take over, but if you harvest it, you can over harvest it. It tastes so much like rhubarb, like exactly like rhubarb. So the website that he just brought up is called The Restful Home. I'm a huge one for free resources, and this one is a good one. If you scroll down, so all of these flower beds you're seeing contain edible foods. I believe that's red amaranth in that picture. It's probably rosemary or some kind of herb around the outside. A lot of those flowers are edible. A lot of the root vegetables you can put in there, like you can see her hot pepper plants right behind the orange flowers. You would never know that's not a flower bed. There's no reason you can't have that in town, in a city. The climbing plants, there are several different climbing plants that are like stevia that you can use as a sugar replacement, so you don't have to import or export sugar. If you can scroll down, she has a picture with cabbages that are just probably lower on the page. There you go. So cabbage is gorgeous. You can get purples, blues, dark greens. The plants around the outside of the cabbage, I'm going to say it's rainbow chard would be my guess on that one. In the back is some purple spinach. You'd never know that's not a flowering plant. That dark purple leaf on the left-hand side, right next to it, is probably a kale, and kale will get very tall and tree-like. So all of this is totally possible in a teeny tiny yard. Like you don't need much of anything, a postage stamp. And you're talking about in that one maybe 4 foot by 6 foot space, a month and a half worth of food. And as long as you're co-planting, like she has in this picture, you can see she has different plants right next to each other. She could probably even put some carrots in there, some root vegetables, because, cabbage doesn't have a big root system and chard doesn't have a big root system. So as long as you're looking at what can live next to each other, there's no reason in a 4 foot by 4 foot square you can't feed a person for 3 months. And if you scroll down to some more of the pictures down below. So here, great example, sunflowers. A lot of people plant sunflowers. They're like, ugh, whatever. Well, they're totally edible. I mean, they're really good for you. They make oils that you can cook with. The giant leaves there look a lot like rhubarb. I'm not positive, but they look a lot like rhubarb. There's hot pepper plants there, again, right in the front. You can see the little green peppers hanging off of them. Look at you. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So this is a really great example. The trees are there to provide shade for your leafy greens that you need leafy greens. My guess is those are nut trees. They might be fruit, but I'm pretty sure they're nut. And everything in that landscape, everything that she's talking about, everything in these resources is totally edible. But if buying seeds and planting is not your thing, Charles, if you could click on the Judy of the Woods link. So there's a woman named Judy, and she also feels like I do that food is everywhere and you should have access to it. She has made this absolutely gorgeous free printable foraging guide. It is a lot of pages, so just be prepared if you're going to do it. It is a great companion for the Seek app so that you can double check. She has tons of pictures. If you scroll down, she'll show you some of the things. She's done a pretty good job of showing you the different life cycles of plants. Pause right there. So if you grab any of those screenshots, she has remedies, she has plants, she has a calendar for when you can find stuff. So this is like her remedies. When you download her thing, you'll see a lot more of it. But she's hinting at plants like resveratrol is in the Japanese knotweed. That's the name I was looking for. Elderberry, black hawthorn, hops, like all of these things we eat every day in all kinds of different foods actually have medicinal quantities or qualities. And it's really, really awesome. You can go back and click on perhaps one of the other ones she has. The calendar, please. So what you're looking for, and every area is going to be different. I'm not 100% positive where she is, but when you look at her climate, then look at a map of your climate. If you're in the same one, you can probably follow her calendar exactly. If you're in a colder climate, obviously push it a few days or a month the other direction, and vice versa if you're hotter. Like when I was living in San Antonio, Texas, I grew tomatoes all winter, just because the weather was perfect for growing tomatoes in the winter in San Antonio, but in the summer, everything died. The same went when we were in El Paso. Up here in northern Maine, I have to start my tomatoes inside. I can't take them out till June 1st, and I'm lucky if I get them before the ground freezes in September. So what you're looking for here, and you'll see on her chart where she says leaf, stem or trunk, sap, root or bulbs, flower, fruit, seed, that's super duper important. So there are plants out there like rhubarb, easy to plant. The only part that is edible is the stem. The leaf will actually kill you, and so will the roots. So you need to know what part of the wild item you're harvesting to do a good job. And then most people know what a fruit is, what a seed is, what a flower is, but if you have any questions, she has a beautiful chart. She breaks out all of the different things, to help you out. Charles, if you could go to the Eat the Weeds link that I sent you. And for a moment, I'll talk about mushrooms while the Eat the Weeds is coming up. So mushrooms are one of the most dangerous things to forage. Almost every mushroom has a deadly lookalike, or if it's not going to kill you, it's going to do permanent liver damage. It's going to wreak havoc on your system. So there are lots of good books. Make sure the book is for your area. Some mushrooms that are edible in Maine aren't edible in Missouri, aren't edible in California. Some that are edible there aren't edible here. The morel is the most known not edible. So there are false morels, and there are only maybe 4 places that they're edible, and the rest of the world, they'll do a number on you. So this website is called Eat the Weeds and Other Things Too. He does teach classes. He seems to be a very knowledgeable human being. Sedum is one of the crops he talks about, and that's one that you can eat out in the woods almost all over the US. And a lot of people actually use it in their gardens. So that is sedum right there. You may recognize it. It kind of looks like a rose when it first comes up of leaves. In the spring, it is delicious. It's full of water and moisture and sweet and kind of tastes like peas. It's a pretty awesome plant. It grows in the woods pretty much everywhere that there's woods. Like it's kind of hard to find it. And he goes through and you can see different pictures. But as you see in that one that just scrolled past with the brilliant pink flowers, that's a South African plant. So don't look at it and go, oh, I'm going to find that in my forest in Pennsylvania. No, you're really not. It's not going to be there. So there's a lot of projects like his of people all over the United States in different states. They do teach classes. They do come out and talk to you about foraging, about what's safe, about what's not safe. One of my favorite plants is, I don't know if you're going to find it on here, but it's one of the wild cherries. And I love to make people taste it. The downside is it makes you feel like you just poisoned yourself. Your whole mouth goes dry, your tongue gets tingly. It actually cures gout. So the plant, very astringent, not particularly delicious. It's okay if you make it into juice or berry. But that's what's so fun about foraging. You go out, you taste things. Once you've identified them and you've checked at least 2 resources, you're like, yeah, this is totally exactly what I think this is. You grab a piece, you stick it in your mouth. Is this for you? Yes or no? And it might not be for you today. It might be like when you were a kid and you didn't like mustard. And now, at 40, you're like, hey, mustard's okay. And when you're talking about farmers and gardeners, I promise you, they pitch a lot of these edible plants. They throw them away. They don't understand the resource that they are. If you work with them, like we have I've worked with a bunch of farmers here in Maine. We go out and we say, hey, do you want to sell leafy greens before your lettuce comes up? And they're like, yeah. I said, great, let's go through your field. Let's pick these plants, put them in bags. They are wild edibles, and that's how you're going to sell them. I guess I'm ready for questions. I think that's
Fantastic, Roxanne. So what about the lazy folks who just want to mow their lawn, but maybe they want to grow a couple things? I guess your point is just, if you don't, chemicalize it and kill it, you can just go out and pick a few things like I do.
yeah,
For
absolutely.
my morning shake, I grab some dandelion or
Yep.
parsley and put it in there.
Yep.
So for the lazy folks, what is your first instruction? I guess you said it, don't fertilize and pick a
Don't
couple
fertilize.
weeds.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that a lot of people, like when you go to the grocery store and you're choosing beets, choose the beets with the tops, dry the tops, and put them in soup. So many people throw away the edible parts of plants. People get carrots with tops on it. They throw away the carrots. People get onions. They throw away the skin. Boil that in water and make a stock, an onion stock to add to your soup. So I guess my very first thing, if you're lazy, stop throwing things away and making more garbage. Like another trick that I tell my farmers, if you're going to do the small raised bed gardening, take a 5-gallon bucket, drill a bunch of holes in it and put it in the ground with the lid on it. And they're like, what the hell do I do with that? Well, it's easy. You're going to put all your kitchen scraps in it so you don't put them in your garbage. The worms are going to go in and out of your bucket. The bucket's going to water the ground. So if you have a problem with gardens that are too dry, you suddenly won't. You'll have an abundance of worms. You'll have an abundance of worm tunnels. You'll have an abundance of moisture from the food that the worms are eating. So it's lazy not throwing out the garbage. It's not lazy walking out and putting in a bucket. I mean, good Lord, how much do you pay for trash living in town and in the city? And if you could take half of your trash and just put it in a bucket in your yard, like, woohoo, that's saving you money.
And for a starter garden, for those who don't want to weed with discipline. So what's an easy starter garden?
So the very first thing I tell people to plant is chives. I want you to plant garlic chives and I want you to plant onion chives. They're going to come up every year, never have to worry about them. As soon as spring hits, you can start trimming them until the frost kills them. You can be eating them the entire year around. So anywhere like by your porch steps, you're going to need like 3/4 sun. So it doesn't have to be full sun. It can have morning or afternoon, not the whole day. And the seeds are 50 cents at Walmart for a packet of seeds. And you'll have a patch, bigger than my head the first year of chives. Just enjoy them. Like, no worries. So simple.
And how do you eat chives?
Ooh, well, if you're like me, you put them on a baked potato, you put them on top of salads, you're going to put them in your soups. The garlic chives are really, really good rubbed on steak. So if you don't want to buy garlic, you can just rub the garlic chives on steak. You'll still have that garlic flavor. You can chop them up and put them on bread with a little bit of salt and butter, and it'll taste like garlic bread. They are probably the most versatile herb. If you are in zone 6 or below, I highly recommend basil outside. I highly recommend parsley outside. And as long as you let these go to flower, they will keep coming back for you. It's not you don't have to do work. Like there's no work. The biggest work is going out and cutting it so that it doesn't turn into a house taking over shrubbery of basil, right? And basil, you make pesto, you put it in spaghetti sauce. You can make a basil pizza, just slice up some tomato, basil, and cheese.
So for the gardeners, we have a lot of participants. Click the raise hand icon, ask your questions. Jim, you want to, I think Linda has a question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have something. Go ahead, Linda.
Yes, I am a little bit jealous because you describe homes with a garden. I am on the 9th floor of a condominium, small balcony facing west, not much sun. And despite that, of course, I do not have a garden. I grow in my balcony basil, oregano, parsley, everything you can imagine. Also, I have hibiscus and I make hibiscus tea and things like this. Now a question.
Yep.
How to find the way to fight against a crime against nature and humanity that was implemented this year in Maryland, like cutting the grass all over the place. If you have a garden outside any place, when the weeds are exceeding like 6 inches, then they give you a penalty of $20, $50 per day that you have to pay. So every year you will see cutting the grasses all over Maryland. And what is the result now?
A mess,
For years,
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's terrible, terrible. They destroy nature because, of course, I used to, dandelion is the best. We have from MIT the dandelion principle, the best herb, medicinal herb also. And I used to collect every year in my life, everywhere. This year, no dandelions. And what happened? When they cut so many times the herbs, the soil cannot retain water from rain. And now you can see most lawns, they are dry, totally. So, I don't know if they will come back in spring, but we have to take a measure to fight against that, to allow at least dandelions to survive for food. Do you understand?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, if you have a way, or you, Charles, or Jim, where to send a letter with pictures and everything, with documentation to stop this crime. I consider a crime, I tell you that.
So, Linda, the Maine had to learn the hard way. So that's where I live now, is in Maine, and we have something called the food sovereignty, and we have the right to food, and it took us 15 years to get those in place, but I'm happy to share with Jim and Charles all the work that we've done to put those in place. So what happened is there was a huge potato farm in about mid-coast Maine, and they refused to do regenerative agriculture. They refused to put soil back into the system, and right now it's a desert. There is only sand. In Maine, where we have more water than anywhere else, in Maine, where we have the best dirt like everywhere. No. It's legit a desert. Absolutely nothing grows there. As the joke, they bring out fake cactuses in the summer so you can sit in the desert in Maine. What they learned from that was, holy crap, we're destroying our ecosystem. It really sucks that it took the desert showing up in Maine to make them realize that. What it got us was an entire platform to fight for the right to food. So Maine is one of the only states, I believe, that has made it in our constitution that every Mainer has a right to food. They can procure it from whoever they want. They can grow it however they want, with some stipulations. I've been helping code enforcement deal with some problems with people who believe the right to food means that on 100-foot yard they can keep a cow. I'm like, no, it doesn't give you the right to abuse an animal. A cow does need an expansive space to survive, but I can tell you can raise rabbits there, and all these other things. So it was a huge push from all of us, but the work is already there. The research is already there. The paperwork, the proof, the ordinances, all of that is there for you, Linda. And what it took for all of us was starting on the ground level. So I would go into town meetings and I would sit down with them and I'd say, here's the ordinance. I'd like you to put it forward. Here's what it does. And when they said, well, I don't think that's going to help us, I don't know how that helps us, I would come in with a full tray of food. I would have cupcakes, I would have brownies, I would have pie, I would have like hoagies and sandwiches, and I would set it down on the table. And I'd say, do you guys want some? And they're like, hell yeah. And I'd say, well, you can't have it without this ordinance, because I made that in my home kitchen from my own property. And everything that you have right now says that that's illegal for you to eat the food that I just made. So when you say that to them, they stop. And that's what you're looking for. People only make change when it's drastic, or they're panicked, or they've been traumatized by something. That's when they're ready to change. So it took, I don't know, a couple hundred people. We've done meetings all over the state. I've spoken at universities and colleges. I spoke at the Common Ground Fair. We had to make people realize what they were doing was destroying everything. So yeah, it sucks. And you kind of need to form an army, but absolutely reach out to the folks in Maine that have already formed the army, and let's take it to your state and help push it there too.
If you can send an email or information to Jim, he can forward to me, because I want to go to court directly. There is no other solution.
No, it's really hard. And what helped us the most was that it was one of our senators who put forward the right to food, because they shut down his farm. He was offering a free food bank to homeless people, and they shut down his farm because they didn't want him feeding people.
On top of that, and I'm finished, when they cut the grass, they spray glyphosate all over the places.
Yeah.
Then they refused to show me what they were spraying, but then I took the bottle and I saw that it was glyphosate inside. Crime.
So for that, you're going to be looking at research studies in South America, and you're going to want to pull the photos, because there are photos of children and families who have been, I'm looking for the right word. They've been introduced to glyphosate in drinking water, in all of this stuff, because of course they can't legally do those studies in the US. Yeah. And you'll be able to show them like misformed bodies, low birth rates. You'll be able to show them proof that this is happening all over the world. You'll be able to say, look, I'm not making stuff up. This isn't me just being, nasty or judgmental. This is me telling you that I want a future for all of us, and you are killing it. Just what you're doing. If they say, no, we have to kill the weeds, you're going to look at them and say, great, I'm going to mix some salt with some water, and I'm going to pour it on that weed, and it's going to die. Or I'm going to take some vegetable oil and I'm going to spray the leaves of that weed, and it's going to die because it can't get oxygen with the vegetable oil, and it can't survive in a salinic soil. The only tomatoes can, and some roses can, but for the most part, most plants can't survive where there's salt. That's why every year road crews have to redo the sides of the roads, because the salt kills everything.
You are a wealth of, thank you, Linda. You're a wealth of information, Roxanne.
Thank you, Jim.
Before the next question, I wanted to jump in. I studied biogeometry. I use it every day in my normal life. It's like a type of, for this purpose, I use a type of dowsing. And what I wanted to share is, and anybody can do this, and I would think it's also muscle testing. There are a number of ways where you can go out. You can go out into the field, look at that mushroom, look at this plant, and in a second, you know if it's good for you or not. And not even poisonous. I mean, you might have an allergy to something, right?
Yeah.
So it's really good. I highly recommend that people learn some of the basics of dowsing or biogeometry. Call me if you need directions on that. And muscle testing. So at least you know if something is, you don't get yourself in trouble. And that even works at home in the kitchen. You've had some fish in the refrigerator for a while, or some food, and you're wondering, God, is it still good, right? I mean, turkey, whatever.
Yep.
And I'm sure it's saved us a number of times, but you take it out. No, it looks good, smells okay. And then you test and it says, no, do not eat this.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to share that. Charles.
No, that's, yeah. And I was
so
just saying, there's a simple test that I make everybody do when I take them foraging. I say, lick the inside of your wrist, rub the plant on it. We're going to wait 30 seconds. If your skin does anything, if it gets red, if it gets bumpy, if it gets itchy, you're not eating that plant. I don't know if it's a true allergy, but you're definitely sensitive to it. So don't consume it.
Right. Charles.
Can you, Dr. Bruce, talk about your past work helping craft farms market locally? And before you do, is the craft food movement that Joel Salatin talks about, is that different or similar to the food sovereignty law that you pushed in Maine? Are those two different things?
In a way, they're two totally separate entities. So there's food sovereignty and the right to food. Maine put two different things into place. The right to food allows any Mainer to purchase food from anybody they want to purchase it from or to grow it themselves. That does not mean it's legal for the person growing it to sell it to them. The food sovereignty for every town that passes that means that it's legal for any small producer to produce that food and sell it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So what Joel is doing is like the grandpa version of that. He is producing the food and the regenerative measures, but he is such a large scale now that he doesn't need the little things like we need. Like food sovereignty really helps. Say, Jim, you and I are neighbors and I make a kick-ass marmalade and you're like, Roxanne, I would love to get that marmalade from you. Legally, I can't sell it to you. With food sovereignty in place, when I make my 6 jars of marmalade, I go, hey, Jim, do you want a jar? It's going to be $4. And you're like, yeah, Roxanne, I'd love one. I put a little stand at the end of my driveway, said made marmalade today. I put out the 6 jars. I put the little $4 sign on them. So yes, a person doing that can absolutely grow to, what Joel is doing.
Just to jump in on that for a second, you could, this is a workaround in DC that we used to have, I'm not sure, and it was for weed, right? For marijuana. So they couldn't sell it, but they could give it away.
Mm-hmm.
So people were selling like fruit juice for $50. You get the bottle of fruit juice and we'll give you a free bag of pot.
Yeah. So
that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Maybe.
they even crack down on that here. Like you can't sell the jar with the goods in it and just the jar. And a lot of that has to do with stupid regulations about what temperature the food's cooked at, what's safe for the food. So like I did a tutorial for the state of Maine for the WIC families on how to ferment foods and how to lacto ferment food. Well, what I thought was interesting is a lot of people don't understand what lacto fermentation is. A lot of people don't know what kombucha is. They don't know what kimchi is. They understand what sauerkraut is, but they've only ever bought it in a can. So they don't know the flavors of live bacteria. They don't understand what it's going to do to your gut health. And they think, oh my God, I got diarrhea. They don't ponder the fact that they just ate a quart of sauerkraut that was not killed. It was alive. They ate a quart of sauerkraut. Now they've got diarrhea, an upset stomach. I'm like, no kidding, right? But they instantly want to blame the person they got it from. So there's all these regulations to prevent stupidity, which I think if we just let stupidity happen, more people would learn. I see Dr.
John.
Well, if I can do a follow-up real quick, if you don't mind. So I wanted to ask you about craft food marketing.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
How important is that service you offered to help these family farms market their food? Because not everyone's a marketer.
No, and I do still help farms all the time. And a lot of it's just what you say and how you say it. Like we had a goat farm that got invaded by PETA because they were talking about baking goat milk soap and they had some photos out of the baby goats drinking from a bottle. And it's things like that I just want farms to understand. You have to be prepared. You're going to have people that are going to hate on you. You need to put your best foot forward as possible, and you need to address issues as soon as they happen. And my doctorate, my research dissertation was on small farms of Maine using social media. Out of all the farms that I work with, there were only 2 that were actually using it effectively. And there were like 5 that were getting their businesses destroyed because they weren't. They would make one post. They would wait a month to go back and look at the post. They'd have tons of questions, tons of responses. And then ultimately people screaming at them because they didn't answer a question. They'd put a post up, oh, come pick raspberries, but they wouldn't say when. Or they'd put it on there that they're a raspberry farm, and they'd have people coming in December going, well, why can't I pick raspberries? It's not difficult things that I'm helping farms with. It's really common sense things. But because they're so focused on farming, on making the best product possible, they don't have the opportunity to learn about the marketing side of it. I still help them all the time. I freelance help them whenever I can. But it's a learning curve. It's like being a small business owner. You're expected to be the plumber, the accountant, the social media marketer, the website designer. You are expected to do the everything, and you can't be good at everything. Sorry, Dr. John, I see you have a question.
Well, it's not, well, it is a question. I think this is a timely discussion that we're having due to the fact that Bill Gates wants to vaccinate everything that we try to eat, even lettuce.
Yes.
So the question is like, somebody mentioned that they live in a condo. I currently live in a condo. I used to have a house, but because of certain circumstances, I had to downsize. I know I try to sprout like lentils and chickpeas in order to get the most out of my food. But like right now in my backyard, it's a huge backyard. My question is, how can we get this, what I would call micro farming, installed into places like I live here in South Florida, where we have a huge backyard that all of this is grass and maybe a couple of trees, where we can turn this into a mini farm, so to speak. And just to let you know, just to preface this,
yeah,
a few years ago, I was part of a group that was trying to convert empty strip malls into small farms indoors using
aquaponics, hydroponics, yeah.
Exactly. We tried to do that. Unfortunately, it never really took off. And we were trying to use like these little plasma lights that somebody over at the University of, I think it was the University of South Florida in Tampa, had come up with a patent to take these lights that you would normally use as a nightlight and use it as a plant growing light, which saved a lot of electricity, but the project never took off.
So there are 3 things you can do to combat that. First, I hope you're not in the part of Florida that doesn't allow people to have gardens in their yards, because I know there is a part of Florida that totally banned that.
I know. I think that was Dade County. I'm in Broward County, but I'm not sure. I have to check that again.
Yeah, perfect. So obviously there's going to be a college within an hour of you somewhere. If you go and talk to their biology department, what happened up in Canada is there were a couple of biology students who wanted to grow in people's yards. So instead of paying you to borrow that space in your yard to grow food, they gave you half of the food that they grew. So they had an entire neighborhood that mapped out 100-foot by 100-foot squares in their yards that these students took over, and they grew food. What ended up happening is they fed the entire community, and people would be like, no, please take 200 feet of my yard. And because the homeowners weren't trying to garden, because they may not have had the skills or the time, and a student was doing it, or someone who was already a farmer, or a housewife was doing it, someone who could take that time to be in the dirt and dig, it didn't cost anyone more than the seeds. And all of a sudden, this person doing the farming usually ended up selling half of the produce back to the homeowner because they wanted it anyway. But I think that person that started in Canada, I want to say they hit their second year at like 200,000 a year in income just from 25 yards and just these little bitty spaces. And the key to making that work is co-planting plants that can go together, seasonally planting. So at the beginning of the spring, you're picking the herbs, and then the peppers come up and the tomato, so that it all cascades in the entire season. So that's really a good, easy solution to what you're talking about.
Well, under normal circumstances, I guess, but I'm a little bit notorious here in South Florida because I push back against the COVID restrictions and the mandates and the vaccines. And I used to work for 2 universities, one being Nova Southeastern University and FIU, Florida International. And of course, I got fired because I pushed back.
Yeah.
So I've been out of work now for a couple of years.
I am so sorry. If you're out of work, you may take on that role. Like, I'm happy to work with you to talk about co-planting and get you set up in 100-foot and 100-foot square, like what you can do to entirely change your whole neighborhood. And legitimately, most families were happy you would come in with like wood and you'd log off, do a little border on the area, you'd keep it pretty. And they're like, yeah, half the food is mine, half the food is yours, sell it, do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, because one of the things that you have to understand, I'm a naturopath, so I understand that food is medicine. Yep. If you're not eating the right nutritionally dense food, you will get sick and get thrown into this medical paradigm. I can't say the word right now.
You're good.
Get thrown into this medical system that eventually kills you. And unfortunately, I had to say that because I used to train DOs and MDs, believe it or not. So I understand where you're coming from. And I just want to see how my neighbors, which I live in a condo, which is three 3 stories tall, how they would be receptive to put in what I would try to do is put one of those elevated gardens. So it's easier to,
Yes and no. So elevated gardens require much more watering. So as long as you can keep it still on the ground and you do the bucket thing that I was talking about, where they take their food scraps out and they put it in the bucket for you for the worm production, then yes, you can do it. If you don't, you will find that everything dies really fast.
Okay.
And absolutely reach out to both Jim and Charles. Have my email. I'm happy to help you get that rolling. What I didn't share, and Jim and Charles probably know, I have multiple sclerosis. Last year, I was in the ICU for a week with COVID. They sent me home on oxygen, told me I'd probably never breathe right again. It was a naturopath who helped me do ozone therapy. It was a naturopath who got me Myers cocktails. And it was a naturopath who found out that I was actually allergic to like 15 different things that I was eating regularly. We've gotten rid of all of that. My skin conditions have almost all cleared up. My multiple sclerosis symptoms are manageable. They're not gone, but they're manageable, and all of this was because someone said, hey, is what you're eating killing you? Like such a simple concept. Don't load me with drugs. Please let me try easier things first. Please let me, do a diet where I start with just rice and chicken, and then we add food slowly and go, holy crap, I threw up for 6 hours after eating wheat. Who thought that I was allergic to wheat? I've been eating it my whole life. Like corn gave me a fever. I was up to 102 fever after eating corn. And I'm like, I've eaten corn as a meal most of my life. Like I'd have 3 ears of corn. That was my meal. Who knew? Dairy. Oh my gosh, my skin rots and falls off from eating dairy, but nobody told me. They gave it a disease name and they're like, you need antibiotics twice a day, every day for the rest of your life. Well, how about just not eat dairy? Like, it's not
necessary. Yeah. It's like Jim said earlier, he's talking about kinesiology, which is muscle testing. It actually works. And there's a lot of science behind it. People think it's, a poo-poo or magic. It's not. Your body knows what your body needs. And if you just listen to your body, you will necessarily be healthy.
Yeah. And so one of the things I'm doing here, so I had to get out of farming because with the COVID and being in the hospital, I just couldn't physically do it anymore.
Yeah,
exactly. And with the MS, whatever. So my kids are homeschooled and I was like, what do you guys want to do this year for your big project? They're like, we want to open a game shop. Okay, cool. That's your big project this year. So last year we opened a game shop. Our first year we were super profitable, so much so that we had to move to a bigger space. And I said, you know what? I want to open a restaurant. There happened to be a building with a restaurant for sale. I said, hell yeah, let's do this. So we're going to have a game shop and restaurant. But instead of serving food that's going to make you sick, we're going to do organic foods. We're going to do leafy greens. We're going to do, let's not put a whole bunch of crap on your plate that's going to hurt your feelings and kill you. So we're going to be, and I've just talked to code enforcement and I shared it with Charles and Jim, we're going to be growing microgreens in the basement. We're going to be growing lettuces and other leafy greens in the basement so that because I don't have a yard here, I want the people around me to be healthier. And the easiest way to do that is for me to save money from buying greens in the grocery store and for me to send that savings off to them. And John, if you're already, notorious, talk to restaurants, be like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm a doctor. I know the facts. I can provide these foods for you. Do you want them?
Right. Well, again, we'll see how that goes right now. I was trying to do this, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was looking at doing something like that in Minnesota. I have a friend of mine that has 2 big buildings. Turn one into an organic restaurant. Another one was going to be a spa. And then with the microgreen growing area in the basement, because she has a basement. Unfortunately, I haven't talked about this, but unfortunately back in September of, while I was up there trying to do this, I fell down a flight of stairs and severely injured myself. So I'm still trying to recover.
Now, I'll give you the idea that I have that I desperately want to do but haven't found funding for yet. I think there should be a restaurant attached to a laundromat. I think that you should be able to go in, drop off your laundry, go eat a lovely meal that's healthy for you and come out and have your laundry all boxed up for you. I feel like that's something a lot of people would take advantage of. I know I would.
There was one in Key West, in fact, that I used to visit when I used to go down to the Keys to see my patients down there. And there was actually one in Key West where there was a laundromat next to it and there was an organic restaurant right there. So But unfortunately, what they did is they took out the laundromat and they put a grocery store next to it.
Mm,
So,
yeah,
but
that's
yeah.
a bummer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for your help, and I will
Yeah,
be
no worries.
reaching out to you.
Absolutely. Jim, you're muted. I saw your mouth. If
So
you
we have
wanted.
time for one last question.
Yeah,
Lori?
but that's weird because I was doing, anyway, you should have heard me regardless. Lori, yes, you're up.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a couple things here that I've come across personally, and one was converting the lawns. So there's a person, his name is Rob Greenfield, and he set himself a project to 100% provide for his own nutrition with nothing bought out from what he provided. He did the thing with the lawns.
Yep.
Six people in Florida, and did some kind of share arrangement with those people, and then foraged 200 different items. So he is one of the free resources that you can add to your list.
Absolutely.
robgreenfield.com, because he documents everything, has YouTubes, and is a very inspirational speaker. I got to see him here at something that's called Firefly, which is a primitive skills festival. But going on to the thing about applied kinesiology and the three things that you were sensitive to, I'm seeing someone here, Dr. Brad Montagna. Number one, he uses applied kinesiology, and he muscle tests everything that is not beneficial, every substance for if it's beneficial or not beneficial. And he has a book out, and it's how to, heal, recover from Lyme disease and chronic disease. And so I'm like 4 months into this program, and I already knew I had a wheat allergy, but he added corn and sugar and dairy, and then nightshades, and within categories of food I could eat oranges and limes, but not lemons and grapefruit. So that customization for each person of their
It's huge.
of their constant. So Dr. Brad Montagna is someone I can recommend, and even as a possible speaker with Freedom Hub.
And something that you will notice, and I have talked to a lot of people about it, the reason you have such problems with wheat is because it's been cross. So a lot of people talk about the DNA modification of plants. The only ones that have to be registered are the ones where they add stuff to them. They don't have to register any of the ones where they remove portions of the DNA code. And there's a lot of plants out there on the market where they haven't actually added stuff to the DNA. They've removed stuff from the DNA. And what you're seeing reactions to 99% of corn and wheat have stuff removed or added to their genetic code. And you may find that eating spelt does not cause a reaction, even though it's an ancient wheat. It has never been modified. Not that I'm suggesting you eat it by any stretch, but it might be.
So the personal contradiction in my life is that I grew up on a wheat farm. And our family still has a wheat farm. And and not only that, my dad was like a wheat industry leader at national and international levels. So.
Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Well,
You want to close up, Charlie? We'll get information from Roxanne.
Yeah, Roxanne, why don't you tell folks how to reach you and leave us with a closing thought.
Well, I am on Facebook and I am on LinkedIn, so either place you can find me. I think Dr. Roxanne Bruce on LinkedIn and Roxanne Bruce on Facebook. You're welcome to reach out to me through email. It's just my name, RoxanneBruce@gmail.com. And I would give you my phone number, but I'm hardly ever able to answer, and email is the easiest way to reach me.